All right, so I'm going to share a little bit about the trip. Now, when I start sharing this stuff, I want to be very careful because I don't want it to reflect me at all. Okay? Is that clear, please? Because it's not about anything to do with me. It's about what God can do through any one of us that has allowed the process to be broken, and what he does when we allow that process. And you'll be amazed at the places where God will give you an opportunity to minister, or who you'll minister to. So I get this invitation to Kenya to be a part of a conference. It was actually during Easter week. Grace is very familiar. Actually, Grace was a really major voice. And thank you for all the kind things that you said while you were there, I guess in the previous years. But it was the most amazing church I have ever been to in 32 years of ministry. By far, there's nothing in the world like it, nothing in the United States that comes close to it, in my opinion. Little did I know, I really didn't know much about the church or the lady that ran the church, who happens to be the most fascinating, anointed, gifted, humble, authentic, most like Jesus, I would say, that I've ever met. That, hands down. The conference was significant. I knew that because of the way they had taken care of me. But again, I've seen excellence in a church. I've never seen servanthood that matched the excellence. So it literally, Manny, it undid everything in my brain. I really came to understand why the American church, which I love and I'm a part of, has a very difficult time understanding honor. We preach honor. There's books written about honor. I went to a place that I actually saw it manifested. Unlike anything, and it was pure. So this church, the level of servanthood and the level of excellence matched from everything that I saw. So I arrived there. I have a text. I receive a text from Beverly, who is, I call her mom because she truly is a spiritual mom to the movers and shakers of the nation. A church that seats about 5,000 to 6,000 people. She built it cash in Nairobi, Kenya. When I tell you class with humility, it's just you until you see it with your own eyes, you don't believe it exists. I get there and I land and I get a text from Beverly saying, Her Excellency and I will meet you at the plane. The vice president's wife was there at the door of the plane greeting me. And then literally they took my passport. I never saw my bags. I never saw my passport. We go and drive off into a private little room, have tea. And this is how funny it was, because I'm still me, right? It doesn't matter who I'm in front of. I'm still like, I get stupid. So I didn't know. I tell her, I'm in like, so I text the girl back saying, listen, are you insane? What do you mean? Because I am dressed like a hobo, and you've got the vice president's wife is meeting me. Like, I told her, I said, so okay, I'm going to get into a fight with somebody in first class and steal their suit before I get off. So she's laughing, but here's the heart. As soon as I get off the plane, I didn't even know. I said to the vice president's wife, I said, I don't know what to do. Should I curtsy? I don't know. And she shakes my hand like this, and I'm just like dumbfounded that it's this real. Like and I was like, and she was so sweet. She disarmed me immediately. She just, be you. So we went into this private room, and for 45 minutes, it was just her and I, and we sat and talked, and she just embraced me. And I thought, this is the vice president's wife. But that sort of began the whole thing to what I would see for the whole week. When I tell you the ministry of what happened, it's hard to really put into words. The level of just hospitality is unlike anything I've ever seen. And it's in their DNA. But this is the way Mom lives. Mom lives owning nothing. Now, when I tell you it is the most giving place I've ever seen, it's the most giving place I've ever seen. Like people walking up and handing her, literally, in fact, the guy that was my driver, his mom owned the Land Rover that we were in. And she walked up during the service and handed Mom the key to the Land Rover. And immediately I'm thinking, well, I guess I'm going to have to Uber back to the hotel, right? So, this is the way she lives. So she owned a home, lived in it, a very expensive home, gave it away, moved into an apartment. But this is a lady that has gone through such breaking to the place where the only thing she owned was the clothes on her back and a 2-inch mattress that she, I guess, borrowed to sleep on at a friend's home. Now, this is a lady that owns homes and cars, but she'll tell you, she has said to me, she's Pastor Jeff, whatever I'm wearing, jewelry, I own none of it. It all belongs to God. I give it away. Like, that's the way she lives, man. She just, it's the most giving church. And it moved me because on Easter Sunday morning, during worship, it's time for tithes and offerings. And I'm telling you, for maybe 20 to 30 minutes, all I saw was children from both sides, coming from the balcony, nonstop. They have this big chest right in the center of the stage of the most beautiful sanctuary you'll ever see. And they just nonstop. And she said to me, I said, that you don't see that in the States. She said, I teach the children from a young age. The greatest thing you'll ever do is give to God's work. Give to God's kingdom. And I'm telling you, man, they live it. They live it. So this is, again, insane. It doesn't happen in America. People that clean the church, there's nobody on staff. Everybody volunteers. The vice president's wife does all of the plants. A guy cleaning the window is actually a billionaire. They all take off their titles. They take all their facades off, and they are all serving God. They're all serving God. This is God's house. The head of protocol, in other words, the person that trains all the ushers and greeters. Okay, so during the conference, they're feeding 5,000 people the most amazing meal you have ever tasted. There's 15 chefs that gave their time to cook for 5,000 people who ate for free. Everything donated. All the food, a semi-truckload of potatoes. So 600 people are volunteering, peeling potatoes. They served. I was at that church for 14 hours a day. Their level of service did not stop. It never weaned towards the end of the night, Manny. It was as strong at the end of the night as it was at the beginning of the day. And when I tell you, it would be food that you would eat at the finest restaurants anywhere in the United States. And all these chefs on their feet the entire day. In fact, never attended one session feeding the people. But that's the way they do it. It blew my mind so much. So I got to minister. I opened the conference. And I'm telling you, I was floored. The response, the favor that God placed on my life, the openness of which they received me. The altar call was absolutely jam-packed the first session that I preached. She came up at the end, Mom, just in tears. And she said, you killed us. You killed us. And then it only got worse the next night, the next session. And she said, and I thought it wouldn't happen again. And then you killed us even more. But it was so moving. I just, that's what I'm saying. I want to be careful because I don't want it to be anything about what I did. I didn't do anything except go through a process and allow God to open a door. That literally this woman can open doors to the nations. The president, the vice president, the chief of, so I got to minister to all these amazing people, influential people. In fact, the president's sister, I spent 4 hours with her and her son, ministering to help undo some things. And the Lord not only healed them, but the son gave his heart to Jesus in that setting. And she was so grateful. So I know the nation is opened up. The chief of justice, the Lord was touching her. Royal part of the royal family. It was insane. Like people, like the most influential people of the nation. Just the humblest, sweetest. So I ministered 4 times. I'm leading to the end here. The first night I ministered on God's grace and our weakness. The second session, not night, but the second session I ministered on God's love, I believe it was. And it just sort of, and then on Friday, which was Good Friday, I ministered on the significance of letting go and allowing God to take you through the process to recover everything. And again, the altar just filled, and I'm talking thousands. When I say filled, I'm talking 1,000 or 2,000 at the altar. It was just insane. And then I ministered again on Saturday on God's love. So I get to on Monday is the close of the conference. Easter Sunday morning, I'm not ministering, but there's a man there by the name of Bishop Freddie Edwards from South Africa, Johannesburg, an entrepreneur, owns multiple malls, a servant of God, humble, thousands. I think if I heard right, it was 30,000 members in his church. So these are very influential people in their nations. He and I just hit it off. So he ministered Easter Sunday morning. It was so powerful and so intense. And then right after the service, they're building a new facility for their kids. I was so humbled by this because everybody that was there has been there for conferences before that. I was the new guy on the block, but she even included me in laying the stone for the youth facility, a $4 million project. When I tell you it's beautiful, it's so beautiful. And so here's the vice president, Dr. Mike Murdoch, myself, Bishop Freddie from South Africa, and Prophet Stephen from England. And if I remember correctly, Mom didn't even lay a stone. It was just us. And to be a part of that, and here's the vice president, and even to show you the heart of his heart, right after that morning, Easter Sunday morning, we go outside, we lay the stone, we go in and we have dinner in the most beautiful room you've ever seen. And there's like 8 of these rooms in their church. Again, you might as well go to the Ritz-Carlton, and that doesn't compare to the beauty of these lounges. Like when she does it over the top. This is God's kingdom. You don't do anything half-hearted. And so, remind me to talk about Tuesday morning, because remind me to just the question that Hans asked me. Can you remind me of that? Okay, thanks, Banny. So this is now Sunday, Easter Sunday. We go and have lunch right after we lay the stones, and we pray. And the vice president is literally 1 seat from me, and it's probably a 3-hour meal. The humblest man, the sweetest man. So again, protocol, he gets up and he's going to leave. And I get up and I don't know what to do. Should I shake his hand, and do I put my hand like this? And he puts his arms up and he gives me the biggest hug. And I was like, wow, I'm getting to hug. And that's what I said to him. It's like, I'm getting to hug the vice president of Kenya. And he laughed and I laughed. But that's their heart. Nobody has titles. They're all God's servants. And we all serve God no matter what we do. So that was Sunday. Monday, Bishop Freddie preaches the most amazing message on that Monday morning. He gets done, and then he just begins to pray in the Spirit for probably 45 minutes. And 5,000 people begin to pray in their heavenly language nonstop. The presence of God becomes so tangible. I felt his hand on my back. I'm sitting in my chair, felt so honored to be there. I feel the Lord's hand on my back, and now he's pushing me to the ground. So I am literally in this position for about 45 minutes, weeping and weeping and weeping and weeping. And the Lord began to minister to me. and the Lord began to heal me. I didn't realize there were so many layers yet still inside of me that he needed to heal. I did not want to get up. I didn't want to minister. I couldn't stop praying in the Spirit and crying, and just, it was really, there was nothing beautiful about it. It was very, very unattractive. Because I'm snotting away, and I'm just trying to wipe the tears and the snot and trying to make sense of it all. And the Lord spoke to me about some things that I needed to let go of. And I think sometimes we allow things to happen, or things happen in our life that we hold on to. We bury. We just bury them, or we compartmentalize them. Men have a great ability at compartmentalizing their lives. But God, there is no compartments with God. He's going to deal with you. He's going to take you through a breaking process. And so at the end of it, I'm trembling. I'm shaking. And the Lord spoke to me, and he said, I want you to release. And he began literally, by name, not he, I, began to release people that I've been holding either unforgiveness towards, or bitterness to, or, like if you mention their name, I would either say something sarcastic, because I still wasn't healed. And we've all been there, right? Talk to me, right? We've all been there, unless like you're angelic or something. But so, and I start blessing these people by name. People that I felt like had just aimed to just take me out. People that never wanted to see me in ministry again. People that just voiced it publicly all over the world. But it was funny, because I actually began to realize that how grateful I am that my story went public all those years ago. Because now people have followed the story that I didn't even realize were following the story. And leadership that has been broken is reaching out to me saying, can you please help me? They would have never known unless they knew the story. So God has a way of even taking what the enemy uses for bad news, and he'll turn it for good news. And I'm telling you, what I heard in Kenya over and over again, and even Mom said to me, we've never heard messages like this in the 7 years that we've had these conferences. She said, this was the best conference we've had in 7 years. The people didn't stop with their Pastor Sam, what this meant to us. In fact, on Sunday morning, I was walking in Easter Sunday morning, and this mother, I guess it was a mom and two daughters, they came. There was literally at the stairs of going into the sanctuary from the outside, and they hand me this offering, and they kneel as they're giving it to me, and I just lost it. It was not pretty. But this is the heart. This is their heart. They're so grateful for what God has done for them. So on Monday, I'm God's dealing with so much, but I get up and I'm free. I'm free. I'm blessing these people now that were my, not enemies, but I would have seen them maybe as enemies. And now I'm blessing them, and I'm asking God to bless them and their families, and by name. And then the Lord speaks to me. He said, I want you to take the offering, and I want you to sow it into your children. And I want you to have this conversation with your children. And so on Friday morning, I gathered my kids. Trey was there. I gathered my kids and their spouses. My son got married on Friday. My oldest son, Costi, got married on Friday. So right after everything, and they were all at the house, and I gathered all of them and sat them down in our living room. I said, I want to tell you guys what happened to me. And so I shared basically what I'm sharing with you now. And I encouraged them, this is the time to let go. This is a time to forgive and just be able to move on. Because you don't realize that the unforgiveness or what you hold in your heart is actually hindering what God wants to do in the future. So maybe you're in this room or you're watching online and you're holding on to something that has happened, and it's been hard for you to let go of it. I'm here to tell you, you need to let go of it. Because as long as you hold on to it, it is imprisoning you to the past. It is chaining you to what has held you so captivated, so captive for all these years. For me, it was four and a half years. So I'm now, and then I hear the announcement, and I'm telling you, the last thing I wanted to do was go up and preach. The last thing. And I hear the announcement, because there's supposed to be a break right after Bishop Freddie's session, and we're supposed to have it like a tea break for half an hour, and then we come back at 11:30. And the announcement is made, we're going to change, we're not going to have the tea break. We're going to ask Pastor Sam to come up and close the conference. Okay, I was trembling before. Now, like, I am really trembling, because at this point, I'm telling you, the presence of God was so thick. I could have just walked up there, said the wrong thing, and just changed everything. But the Lord had spoken to me about what to share. And so I shared about the life of Jacob, on how God broke him. But I saw something that I hadn't seen before. Why did God break Jacob? Why did God have to break him? And so as I went through that message, again, I just knew that people were so hungry for the change in their for God to change them as he changed Jacob. You know the story in when Jacob wrestles with God, and God changes his name from Jacob to Israel. But why did that happen? And so I shared about that, and I'm going to go into it in just a moment, but I shared about that. And then I just asked, how many of you are longing for God to change you? And I shared the story. And the Lord actually spoke to me as I went up on that stage, and he said to me, he said, I want you to look back and honor everyone that has brought you to this point. And he said, but I want you to look ahead of you, because what you see and the woman that you see is going to take you into your future. And so I literally, in my heart, I looked back and I began to honor every single person that stood with me, that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. But I knew everything that had happened in the last 4.5 years only was to take me to this moment in Kenya, to be in a place that I've never been in before, to be at a church I've never heard of, really. In fact, I never heard of it prior to Grace sharing about it. To be with this woman of God, who is truly a woman of God, and you guys know that I don't say that often, truly is a woman of God. And I knew this woman would open the doors to the nations. But it was that kind of heart. It was the kind of person you connect to, a servant, a true servant. So that was Monday. So there was no need to have an altar call, because everyone raised their hand. So there's no way I can have everybody come down. We would have been there for another hour. Tuesday morning is the ministers' gathering. And in that gathering, Bishop Eddie is preaching. But the architect, and when I tell you these are influential people, they're amazing people. This architect, we're talking about just the difference between the American church and the church in Africa. And he says to me, this architect says, Sam, why do you think this is? And he's from Denmark. And so I thought, well, and I said, it's the system. But that was just my initial reaction. It's the system. It's the American system. We don't come to serve, we come to be served. And it's about titles, and it's about, the sense of entitlement. And when I think of the people that Mom has on that serve alongside of her, and no one is on staff, and they all give of their time because God's kingdom is that important to them, just blows your mind. Because here if you serve, you want to be seen, and it's just always connected to some kind of motive or, so. But then as worship started that morning with the ministers, I said to the Lord, Lord, I just sort of responded to Hans from my heart. But I want to ask you, what's the difference? What happened? Why is it so different here than it is in the States? And the Lord just spoke a word to my heart, and he said, the church in America went from being a family to becoming an organization. But this is what it's like when the church is a family. And I said, Lord, I'm taking that back with me. I will never, you guys know, Steph, you know, you've been at TGP, Daniel, you've been, Parlo, you've been, all of Lindy, I can just go on, Manny, Grace, you guys have all been at TGP. You know what it's like. You know what it's like, Esther. We became a part of a system. are part of an organization that has, all the different, and I understand process and order and administration, but it gets away from what it's all about, and it's about serving Jesus. And it's about serving people. And then it becomes about the money that's needed to keep the machine, right? To keep the machine going. Well, I'm done with that. I've been done with that. That's why I rejoice when we can come together on a Sunday night, and if there's 5 of us, I'm good. It's a great freedom to not have to worry about the numbers and the finances and how are we going to make it. I have never worried one day of how we're going to make it. When I tell you God's grace has provided, God's grace has provided. So that Tuesday morning was this gathering with these pastors. It was so amazing. It was so amazing. And then they invited me to come up at the end after Bishop had finished preaching. And I just sort of shared a little bit from my heart about just what I shared with you. My prayer is that all of us will remember that I understand the organization part, and I understand the business part and all of that stuff. We've done it. We did it well. We went from a church of, 8 people to, having what we had and a $4 million thing and buildings and houses and land. And in the end, what's it matter? If it's not about the people. And if it's not about serving God with a pure heart. That it's not about any motive or, what do I get out of it? If we get nothing out of it, but that we've served God's kingdom, that's what it's about. So I came back with that. I came back with, I never want to fall back into that system or the pattern of that system again. That we're all God's servants, no matter what we do. And when I tell you that church is filled with millionaires who have business, but this is how she has lived her life. She gives everything away. When she tells me every piece of jewelry I wear isn't mine, because I can give it away. But when somebody gives me something, she said, when somebody gives me something, I don't hold on to it. I realize that that's just simply a blessing from God that I may have to give away. So I tell people, whatever they give me, it's not mine. And when you see what that woman has done with her faith in God and a heart that gives beyond anything that you can comprehend, I look at that and say, that's the kind of God I want to serve. That's the kind of person I want to shepherd or mentor me. I don't want to get back into the system. All right, so talking about church. How much do I say? But it's, all right, so it'll be probably another 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks before we can move. But let me tell you what's happening. A few weeks ago, I'm sitting with my brother Chris and we're having coffee. And so he says to me, have you thought about a Sunday morning? And I said, well, yeah, but I'm really happy where we are, and and we're small, so I can't really afford anything. He said, well, let me call a couple of friends of mine. I said, okay, I'm open. But I've always felt the stirring, especially recently, to try to, even if it's for a month, to attempt and just see what would a Sunday morning feel like. So I've talked to Manny and talked to Trey and Sammy. So I felt, okay, let's just try it and see what happens. I'm not going to make decisions on my own again, so I make sure I get people speaking into my life. So anyway, so he calls me. We leave our coffee, and he calls me that night, and he said, listen, I reached out to a pastor friend of mine, and I reached out to another friend of mine who's a business guy. And do you remember the car dealership? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, it's sitting empty. And so I called the car dealer, the guy that owns it, and he said he wants to check with his attorney, but he seemed really open. I said, what? Yeah. So the next day I go and visit it. And when I tell you, I was so blown away when I walked into the front door of the showroom. And the assistant to this guy who owns it is there, and he's not of our faith, and he walks me through, and I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening, because this is all within 24 hours. And he says, and he's telling me about, this and that, and then he says, now when you grow, and I looked at him and I said, wait, what did you say? When you grow. And now this is a man that's not of our faith. And I said, okay, so you're telling me when we grow. Yeah, he said, yeah, you can move out of the showroom, and then he walks me into the service bay that is 17,000 square feet, air conditioned, that you can eat off the floor. He said, we can move in here. And again, he's just talking, but when I tell you it's state of the art, it's a state of the art building. So again, we haven't talked to the owner. So the next day, Eric and I go there and we see it. And again, I'm just like, okay, this is like great, but it's way, like, this is beyond my comprehension of God doing something like this. He's got the building up for sale for $9 million. So we go there in the morning and we just sort of see how it could work, and we see the showroom and how could it's not big, but it's definitely it's beautiful. So we leave there on Friday, we go have lunch, and I called my brother Chris and said, listen, love it. What's the next step? And he says, well, you know what? I feel like it's the Lord. I need to call this guy. So he puts me on hold and he calls the owner, and now we're on a three-way conversation. And he said, well, the owner says, where are you now? And I said, well, we're just having lunch, my wife and I. And he said, well, why don't you meet me there in an hour? So we go back, and now we're meeting at the car dealership, and this is a shrewd businessman. Everything I've heard about this man is he's a shrewd businessman. I saw the kindest heart, a man who isn't of our faith, who sits and has a conversation with me and my brother and my wife for an hour and a half and opens his heart. And I start asking ask for little things. Every little thing that I asked for, he said, absolutely, sure. And I was like, what? And again, we didn't talk numbers or how much. And so he walks over to this printer and he says, do you need printers? Because he's got inside the showroom, they've got all their stuff. I said, no, not really. And he picks up this printer, brand new HP printer, and hands it to me. He said, no, take it, you're going to need it. And then, do you need umbrellas? Because he's like handing me umbrellas to put in the car. Your church is going to need umbrellas. And he's just giving me stuff. So, I don't know. I still am like this right now. Like, okay. But it is the most beautiful. And you talk about location. So we get done, and so I asked him, why are you doing this? And he said to me, Sam, we're Palestinians. And he said, we've suffered a lot. And he said, and I know you've suffered. And I want to do something good for you. The man owns the dealership. And I didn't know what to say. And he said, don't worry about anything else. We'll work everything out. And then he starts telling me about the area and how things are, just shutting down. Like the stores are the bank's going out of business. The store across the street from him is going out of business. He said, so I don't think it's going to sell anytime soon. And he's letting us use it. So that means we're going to have to, buy chairs and buy a sound system and make it work. Find a way to make it work. But I'm okay with that. So when I said to him, do you understand this whole thing about restoration? No. I said, mentioned his name, and I said, this location is on the same exit as our old facility. That I'm simply getting off of I-4 on 46A, and instead of turning left, I'm turning right. And I think if you as a crow flies, I think if you go from the old TGP site and draw a line straight across, I think you pretty much almost are there. That's how good God is. And I know that it's not the final facility, but I know this is, and the fact that it's called Evolution, by the way. If you've ever seen where Evolution Auto is, if you're driving on 417, you see it right there. So we are literally on Reinhardt Road, right off the 417 exit. We are sitting at the most amazing location. Lots of parking. So now it's grunt work. Now it's getting help. We got to move boxes. So now we got to go in. So next week, this week I have to go to Toronto for my mom's year anniversary. But then after that, I'll be calling on some of you. We're going to need help. We're going to need, I'm not going to put any financial burden on anyone. If God speaks to your heart, we need to get chairs. We need to get a sound system. Thank God it's not a really big right now as far as where we're gonna meet, but it's gonna give us enough space. It allows, and I'm telling you, when you drive in there, so we started asking for some really difficult things. So I said to him, well, would you mind if we put a small a sign? He said, no. I want you get a canopy and you cover. When I tell you their street sign is massive, right on Reinhardt. He said, cover it. I want people to know that you're coming. So I'm telling you, the man's favor is insane. And he's a Muslim man. That God used a Muslim man to say, TGP, I want to bless you. Don't ever put anybody in a box, and don't ever think that God's way of blessing is only through a Christian. God will use people that may not even agree with you in faith. Trey, it's getting real dark. Are we working? Are we changing? Should I get music? Okay, thanks. So I'm telling you, and I think what happened for me in my head is that this is uncommon favor. This isn't just favor. This is uncommon favor. So this is what I'm believing for all of you. Every person that sows, every person that is a part of it, is that what God has done with me and with us as a body, and I don't know and it doesn't matter. If it never grows, I'm not worried about that. That's not my concern. God grows the church. I don't. I'm not going to get into the whole, we need to market. I get it. And I got somebody that can do it better than anybody. But that's not my aim. My aim is that we're going to be a place where broken people can come and find healing. A place where people that are so hopeless about their tomorrow can come and actually not only experience hope in the way that it comes from God, but they can experience it in us in the same way that I went to Kenya and I saw what it's supposed to be like. I will never again build another church in the way that it was built in the past, where it becomes about the building. Imagine just for a second with me. Again, this is just, if I don't preach it, I'm not worried about preaching. I imagine for a second, if every pastor in America, and if every leader, if we would have focused on the people as much as we focused on receiving offerings and building buildings and building this and building that, if we would have just taken the same amount of passion and built people, what would it be like? If we could have taken even a measure, just or a percentage of the money that, and I'm sure that some do, but if we could have just taken a percentage of the money and given it to the poor and helped people out and put people in homes, what would that look like? So what I'm telling you is for some people, they're not going to fit. They're not going to fit with me because they're going to want those other things. And I can't provide that. I want to provide an authentic place where people can come with all of their crap and know that they're going to be loved, they're going to be ministered to, they're going to find hope, they're going to find healing, they're going to find an authentic group of people that won't judge them or talk about them behind their back. And it's going to be about serving people. Serving people that are, whether broken or not. It can't be about what prestige. It can't be about, oh, look what, even that in my heart, like people were saying to me, wow, will that ever make a statement to all the people that didn't like you? Driving on Reinhardt Road and seeing that. And a part of me, part of me, just being honest, a part of me wanted to say, yeah, in their face. That was prior to me going to Kenya. Yeah, let them see what God has done. Validate me. Not after Kenya. No. I don't want anybody to have to feel that. I want them to know that if God can restore Sam Hinn, God will restore them. And if God can do this for me, he can do this for them. And I would have never picked that man or that place as even a possibility. A Muslim man saying, what can I do? And you can meet in here as long as the building doesn't sell. And even when it sells, I'll give you plenty of time. I just figured, look, if this is the next step, that's the next step. What's that? After that, I can't worry about that. I would have never thought that was even a step. To go from, thank God for what we've received here from Harvest Time. Thank God for what they've done for us. I was just with John and Mary yesterday. Oh my God, we started talking about the vision and casting, and it's crazy. If I told you even that conversation, you'd go, all right, this is way too much. But once it starts, when favor starts, it's just literally, it's like a wave. And it started hitting wave after wave after wave. So I know something great is going to happen here. I know it is. But here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to walk in here and look for titles and expect, that we're going to be served by people. We're here to serve people. And we're here we need to honor each other. We can't talk about honor. We need to live it. I saw what it looks like. I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes. When you got the most influential people in that nation washing windows, running the ushers and the greeters, making food. That's the servant's job. Right? We're all servants. And I'm not going to preach this, I'm going to live it. So I will keep you posted on the whole thing about the building. My aim, I hope, is after there's a lot of things that have to come together, but my hope is after Mother's Day. We were hoping for before, but it won't be possible, just because there's really a lot of work to be done. And to do it we don't want to do it, half-hearted. We want to do it better than that. And so I will let you know. And it's just, what will it look like? I don't know. I just know I'm going to honor God the same way that I honored him here. I'm going to honor him there. And we got to make sure that we step it up to take care of people, to be on time, to serve, to be the smile. Sometimes you don't say anything to anyone, but it's the smile that they get at that front door and what that makes them feel like. So I'm here to tell you, I'm really keeping it together right now, but I have never experienced such favor on my life like I am right now. Never. And my prayer is that all of us will allow God to break us, because this is what I learned, and I'm not going to preach it to you now. But when I shared about the story of Jacob in South Africa, which was at my trip after Kenya, and what God did there, blew me away. But here's the story. God wrestled with Jacob because God had to break Jacob of his ways because there was a Joseph that was coming. And Joseph was one of Jacob's sons, if you read the story in Genesis. Moses spends 10 chapters talking about Jacob. And I know for a fact that God broke me. He had to break me for my children's sake. And for the sake of another generation, like I see with Daniel and these young kids that are going to be coming up. So God has to break us. And I say this with all respect, I don't care who you are. I don't care what your name is or what you've done, and it doesn't matter. For God to save our children or to save the next generation, he has to break us. And here's what happened with Jacob. Jacob had 4 other sons. And those 4 sons that Jacob raised all had issues. From sleeping with a prostitute, and I can go on. And these are the children of Jacob. But God had to break Jacob, which is why he wrestled with Jacob, because he went from changing Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel. And by the way, his name, Jacob, is the most mentioned person in the Bible. His name is mentioned nearly 3,000 times, 3 times more than the name of Jesus. And there's a reason, because his name is Jacob. He's right around 400 times in his name Jacob when he's mentioned. But there's another 2,500 times where his name is Israel. After he wrestled with God, God changed his name. Jacob had depended on himself, depended on his ability to push, and his name meant schemer and pusher. Jacob had spent his entire life pushing his way, stealing the birthrights, stealing the blessing. Everything he did was push. And so God said, for Joseph's sake, I have to break him of his patterns. And so God wrestles with Jacob. And you know the story. He touches his hip socket, and Jacob is limping for the rest of his life. I never saw the story till recently. Why did God wrestle Jacob? It was because of Joseph. Because out of all of Jacob's sons, the 4 sons that had issues those 4 sons were raised by Jacob. But Jacob never raised Joseph. Israel did. And who was the one that went to prominence? Joseph. So Joseph was right about 4 or 5 years old, his most formative years, when Israel was the one that raised him. And God began to deal with my heart. There has to be a shift in spiritual fathers and mothers' lives. God has to break people like me and others and like you, whether it's a spiritual parent or a natural parent. God has to break us for the sake of our children's future. And so there was this wrestling match, and God changes his name from Jacob to Israel, and Jacob walks with a limp for the rest of his life. And 24 hours after the wrestling match, the guy that he's running from, his brother Esau, is now, he has to confront him. And you can read this in Genesis 37. Now the schemer is no longer a schemer. The pusher who's pushed his way throughout his life can no longer push. Because you know what? Psalms 147 says that God does not delight in man's legs. What does that mean? The reason that God touched Jacob's socket, his hip socket, is because your hip socket is where you get all the power to push. And I'm just being honest. For 27 years of my life in ministry, that's what I did. I pushed because the pressure that was on me that comes from and I allowed it. And ministers are dealing with it every single Sunday. They're having to push for the offering and push for this and push for that and push to make things happen. We need to stop pushing and stop trying to make it happen and let God do what God wants to do by his grace. God had already blessed Jacob. Jacob's blessings were coming because of God's grace, not because he pushed his way through. But that's all Jacob ever knew, was how to push his way through life. And maybe like some of us, that's all we've ever known, because we're pushers, we're schemers. We may not scheme with intention with evil, but no, we plan and we scheme and we think, well, maybe we can win their favor. Well, you know what? I would have never thought that God would give me favor with a Muslim man. The Christian pastor never responded, but the Muslim man did. And it was the Muslim man that said, I want to bless you. No, all of us would have said, no, the Christian pastor would have blessed us. So what I'm saying to you is we need to begin to look, because God's going to bless us in ways that we didn't see it coming. God sends me to Kenya to show me what it's like, and then to break me. To break me of things that I needed to pass on to my children. How many bad habits have we passed on to our kids? Because we said, this is the way you do it. And I agree, you got to work hard. I get that. But we can't teach our children, you need to push your way through life and you need to go and get it. At what expense? At the expense of shutting down the grace of God? Like Jacob, and now you have to push and scheme your way through life? And so what does God do? He touches his hip socket and Jacob is limping. And 24 hours after the wrestling match, he's in excruciating pain. And who does he meet? Who was he running away from that now he has to confront? His brother Esau, who he had stolen the blessing from. And what does Jacob do? Jacob bows 7 times. And Esau is so moved. Because you imagine in today's world, having hip surgery and then walking on it within 24 hours, on top of walking on it, you're having to bow a knee. And 7 times he bows. I couldn't imagine the excruciating pain. And Esau is so moved that the limp that Jacob had impacted him so much that rather than fighting his brother, he embraces him. I wonder what would happen if people saw our brokenness. If people saw that we had an encounter with God. I wonder how they would respond. My prayer is that all of us will allow the process for God to break us. That all of us would have some kind of match with God where let's really see, is he in control of our lives or are we in control? Or have we allowed the pressure of the circumstances around us to actually control us and how we live our life? What I'm saying to you is I really believe this because I'm experiencing it, that there's blessings in store for all of us if we will allow the process to be broken, for God to change us and to change who we are. There's uncommon favor that comes. And the things that you least expected will begin to happen effortlessly. But we have to get to the place where we say, okay, God, break me. Break me of things. And listen, if you would have said to me, I think you're still holding on some stuff in your heart, man, that I would have said, you know what, let me go pray about that because I don't think so. But man, did God show me that there was. When somebody mentions someone's name and you immediately come up with a joke because you want to diffuse the pain, there's still more to deal with. And before God, on that Monday when I stood up, it was gone. It was gone and I let it go. I said, never again will it control me. And I want to bless them, God. And I even said to the Lord, I asked you for an opportunity to see them because I need to say to them, I owe you an apology. It's either it's going to be real or it's not, because I'm not going to fake and play the game. So here's what happens. God breaks Jacob. Jacob raises up Joseph. Joseph is the one that becomes prominent. And then guess what Joseph does? At the end of Jacob's life, he says to Jacob, Dad, I want you to meet Pharaoh. Hey, Pharaoh, I want you to meet my dad. And Jacob ends up praying a blessing over the most influential and prominent man in the world in that time. Here's my point. Our destinies as spiritual fathers and mothers, and as fathers and mothers, is directly connected to the next generation, to our sons and daughters. The reason that I did what I did with my kids is because I realized through that story that I can't allow any of this stuff to get into my kids' hearts. And if it did, I'm responsible to help. It's got to get out. Because my destiny is connected to theirs, and their destiny is connected to mine. So God breaks Jacob, he changes his name, he walks with a limp, all for the sake of that the one who raises up, the one that is going to go into prominence, isn't going to be raised by Jacob, he'll be raised by Israel. So if we look back at our lives in the way that we've raised our kids, or even for me as a spiritual leader, I'll never again lead the way I used to. And I realized, and I'm just saying this out loud, Daniel's destiny in God is directly connected to me, and my destiny is directly connected to his. Likewise with each and every one of you. So we need to make an impact. And here's my point. It has to begin in us. The breaking has to begin in us. If it doesn't begin in us, then you know who suffers? The next generation suffers. So my challenge to all of us, and you're watching online hearing this message, what does God have to do yet in your life that he needs to break? What are you still holding on to from the past? You thought you let it go, but maybe if you just gave some time to God to deal with you, is there still some layers of stuff that like I said, with me, I didn't even realize there was layers. And then when God begins to push literally his hand on my back and I'm going to the ground, I realize there's stuff that he wants, like pressing. He's removing it. I thought I was free. I wasn't. That's the truth. I wasn't. But I am now. And there may be more. So what are you holding on to? Is there any unforgiveness, any bitterness, any, if I mention some of, the people that you don't like in your life and the people, you can mention their name and it just doesn't bother me either way, where before it would have really bothered me. So whose name would I mention to you and you go, ooh, well, that means that there's a layer that needs to be dealt with. Because God has to break us. God has to break us for our children's sake. Whether it's doubt, worry, fear, whatever it is, bitterness, unforgiveness, I'm pleading with you. I'm pleading with you. We've all made mistakes. We've all failed. At some point in our life, we have failed. We can't pass on those mistakes to our children. And I tell you, for me, as a leader, and I say this just so humbly, as a spiritual leader, what a wake-up call. What a wake-up call for the next generation, because I want to raise up Josephs. I want to raise up young men and women that are absolutely going to impact their world and go to places that I will never go. Joseph went places Jacob never went. But Joseph remembered. And if there's anything that I see today, listen, we don't see honoring our fathers and mothers in our world. I see less of honoring our spiritual mothers and fathers in the world. This is what Mom said during that ministers' meeting that blew my mind. Again, I'm talking and I know that you can't imagine it. But if you met this lady and you saw what she has accomplished in her nation, it would blow your mind. You wouldn't believe it. It exists. It does. So on Tuesday morning, at the end of the ministry time and the sharing, she stands up and she says this: my spiritual father is Reinhard Bonnke. And if Reinhard Bonnke, my spiritual father, who I honor, told me that I was crazy and this needs to shut down, I would shut it down tomorrow. All of you, and she's got hundreds of sons and daughters in the faith who are pastors. And by the way, almost everyone that I met that was like a part of her ministry team, pastors and in different nations, large churches, she rescued. She reached out to them when nobody did. She gave them a chance when nobody else did. She gave them a pulpit when nobody else would have them preach. And you want to talk about loyalty? They are so loyal to her. But this is what she said to them. I would shut this down and I would shut the church down tomorrow, because I will honor my spiritual father. That's what she walks in. It's not a game. Because if you actually looked at it, it's very biblical. But it's never used to control. If I see something in America that's wrong, if there is the spiritual fathers and mothers, sometimes it's for control and it's not to release destiny. I'm not going to do that. I know that my kids are going to do more for God than I ever dreamed of, in whatever that God gives them to do. But here's my responsibility is to make sure they honor God with their life. And not just to tell them, but I sowed into it. I took the offering and I said, portion to each of you, because I know I'm sowing into good soil, that God wants this, He wants to bless this seed and He wants to bless your lives, but you can't hold on to anything. You've got to walk with forgiveness. And I told them, I said, I need you guys to hold me accountable. Trey, did I not say that? I said, I need you guys to hold me accountable. That God did this in my life, and I want to be accountable to you guys, that if I start talking trash about somebody, you stop me. I never said that, but they know that's what I meant. If I'm start to put somebody down, you stop me. Because I can't be that guy anymore. There's too much at stake. And you know what? If I didn't give a flip about you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. And I don't want to hinder any of your walks with God because of some issue I had 4 years ago. Some unforgiveness that I'm still holding on to because I'm an immature child. That's not who I am. And I care about your destinies, and I care about your walks with God, and I care about your children, and I care about what investment you're going to make into their lives. And long after we're gone, our kids need to do more for God than we ever dreamed. Right? So it's time. It's time not just to play church and come to church. It's time to be it for all of us. And to be that in your home. I'm telling you, my whole walk at home has changed. The way I start my day and everything's changed. Everything has changed. I can't go back. There's nothing that matters more to me than God's kingdom in all of our lives. So let's begin to pray with a desperation. Because I'm telling you, if He's doing this in my life, I pray He does it in your life, because the same uncommon favor that is on my life, and for whatever reason it's on there, I want it to happen for you. Amen? Well, I'm glad you came. Let's stand. Let's stand. And I can't make you be honest. Come on, Trey, if you'll make your way up here. But I've said for a long time, honesty demands you. Honesty demands you, right? You got to be real. You got to be real with yourself. That's where it starts. I wonder how many of us are holding on to things that have happened to us that we've struggled with. And maybe you've never opened up to anybody about it. And that's fine. That's between you and God. But I want to encourage you at least not to allow it to cripple you anymore. At least, maybe it's a relationship, a friendship that has gone awry. Somebody attacked you. Whatever the situation is, my heart for you is, it's time for you to let that go. You have to begin to let it go because it's hindering you. It's stopping something that God wants to bring to you, that you don't realize that maybe it's actually going to impact not only your life, but the life of people that you love, like your kids. I wonder how much we've passed on to our children that isn't of God. Maybe now we can begin to pass on things to them that are of God. It's a challenge. It's a risk. I know it is. But I also have begun to see the rewards of it. I'm so grateful for what God is doing. I'm grateful for the new opportunity and moving to a Sunday morning and having a place that we can gather. But I never want to fall prey again to the whole thing of the system. I want it to be about Him and about us and about you. So I want you just to lift your hands. Just take a moment. Just allow the Lord to minister to you. And you heard what I had to say. I'm not going to pull it out of you. But I pray that the Lord would just touch your heart and calm your nerves to let you know that He loves you. Just allow Him. Just allow Him. If we could, I'm going to ask this. I'm just going to ask just for a moment. If you could just even control your emotions just for a sec. And just let Him minister to you. Don't respond yet in a way that I know I already see there's people crying. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm saying to you, don't interrupt what He wants to do in you by just allowing the emotions to control you. Allow it to go deeper than that. Allow it to go deeper than that layer. Maybe it's that unforgiveness that you've been holding on to. Maybe it's that wound. But how long are you going to keep revisiting that wound? Is it time now to let it go? Is it time now to say, it no longer controls my life? Because God, I need you to forgive me. I ask you to forgive me right now, Lord, for the things that I have held on to. The unforgiveness, Lord. And whether I ever reconcile with these people, that's not the issue, God. The issue is I can't walk around with unforgiveness in my heart towards those that have hurt me. You're watching online. I'm going to encourage you to do the same thing, because this is as much for you as it is for anybody in this room. Lord, I just pray for your uncommon favor to come. I don't know how it's going to come, Lord, and I will not determine how it comes. But I'm just going to ask that it comes, Lord. And as we release this pain, as we release these issues of our life, Lord, that have controlled us, as we've done no different than Jacob. We've pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and you are done with seeing that behavior. And for the sake of our children and our spiritual sons and daughters, you intervened in Jacob's life because you got tired and said, enough is enough. What I've chosen to give you by grace, you can't push your way into. It's already yours. The blessing is already yours. So Lord, I ask you to continue to break us. That each and every one of us would wrestle with you in a different way, God, that you would take out our hip socket, take out our ability to push our way through life. Change us. Change our lives, Lord. Change the way we do life. You allowed me to see it in Kenya. You allowed me to see it in South Africa. You allowed me to see it I saw it. It's real. It can happen. It operates. We've been blinded in America because we've made it about us. When it's about people, it's about your kingdom. It's about your kingdom. It's not even about people. It's about your kingdom in the lives of people. I can't imagine what you'll do with each and every one of us if we will just allow the process. So I ask you to wrestle with each and every one of us, Lord, and take ownership, control because that's what it's about. Are we in control or are you in control? I want you to be in control of our lives. I want you to be in control of my life on a daily basis. So Lord, we just give it to you. We give it to you. We give you our hearts. We give you our lives. We give you you our pain. We give you our disappointments. We give you our discouragement. We give you the betrayal. We just give it all to you. We give the pain to you. God, we just give it all to you. I just ask you to take control. Would you just lift your hands up and just ask him to take control of your life? Ask him, just innocently ask him, take control. I yield it all. I yield the steering wheel. I yield being the pilot of my own life. I yield it. God, I yield it. Now with that, Lord, I stretch my hands to your precious people in faith. And I ask you for uncommon favor to come, Lord. And I'm not tying this to some seed offering. No, God, I'm asking you in your grace and in your mercy and in your kindness, Lord, that you would begin to bestow on them your favor simply because, Lord, they want to do what's right in their heart to honor you. And I thank you for the new facility. I thank you for just the chairs and the sound system. Lord, I am not going to worry about the financial burden of any of those things. You will meet that need. It's your place. It's for your people, God. I cannot worry about it. I will not worry about it. I just thank you for sending the ones that need to come and be a part. God, I just thank you for all of it. You started it, you'll finish it. Just help us be a part of it. To just partner with you for your kingdom. We take nothing with us, God. We take nothing with us but what we've sown into your kingdom to see lives change. And Jesus, if it's just but one life, it's worth it. One life like Joseph changed the nation. Changed his family. So I ask you to break us for the sake of our children, for the sake of our sons and daughters. Heal us. Not just for our sakes, but for theirs. The next time we hold them, let's pray for them. Let's not just embrace them and have a nice day. Within that embrace, pray for them. Pray for your kingdom to come. Pray for your blessings and your hand of favor to be on their lives. I pray for each and every one of you and for each and every one of your children. I pray for God to bless you and for God to keep you. For God to make his face shine upon you and give you his countenance. For his peace to come. That there'll be nothing missing, nothing broken. That you're the head and not the tail. You're above and not beneath. You're blessed in the city. You're blessed in the country. You're blessed wherever you go because of God's hand on your life. And I thank you, Jesus, for raising up a group of us that are no longer Jacob's, but Israel. Our utter dependence is on you and not on ourselves anymore. I thank you, Jesus. I thank you for the favor that is coming on all of our lives if we will but allow the process. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen and amen. Can we give the Lord a clap offering of praise and just say thank you to him? Thank you so much.